Not all true revenge stories explode. Some grow slowly, in the dark. Mine took 5 years. He thought I was a frail old woman, left to water plants in a quiet apartment. He thought I had forgotten. But I was just getting better at remembering every single reason I couldn't. He thought he was free. He never saw me in the shadows watching. The sun felt warm on the back of my hands. I sat on my balcony, a concrete square made private by the deep blue hydrangeas I tended with clinical care. Below me, the Chula Vista community was silent. The grass was a perfect manicured green. The curving walkways were empty. In the distance, the San Diego skyline was a line of sharp glass and steel. A light breeze moved through the leaves, carrying the faint smell of salt from the bay. My neighbor's poodle yapped twice, a thin, sharp sound that was quickly shushed. People who live here think this silence is peace. They are wrong. Peace is an ending. This was just a pause. A very long, very careful pause. I had lived inside this quiet for 5 years. I let it wrap around me, thicken, until it became a good place to hide. I picked up the tablet from the wicker table. The glass was cool against my fingertips. I tapped the screen and opened the local news site. His face was there. Julian Thorne, 48 years old, and he owned the city. The headline read, "Julian Thorne pledges new wing for Children's Hospital." His smile was wide and practiced. It was the smile he used for magazine covers and charity galas. It was the same smile he had used on me, my stepson, the celebrated heart of San Diego. A good man. A rebuilt man. I closed the article. I didn't need to read it. I knew what it said. I knew him. I remembered the day my peace began. It was 3 weeks after my husband, his father, was buried. The air in our old house was thick with the smell of stale flowers and polish. The lawyers used long, complicated words. Insolvency, reputational damage, creditors. Julian sat next to me on the sofa, the one I had picked out 30 years before. He placed his hand over mine. His skin was smooth, his nails filed and clean. "Eleanor," he said. His voice was a low, sad hum. "This is a mess. A terrible, terrible mess Dad left." He slid a tablet in front of me, its screen bright in the dim room. "It's all digital now. It's just easier this way." He pointed to a small box on the screen. "You just sign here. It's a stock transfer. It moves all of Dad's voting shares, my shares, into a blind trust." He leaned closer. I could smell his expensive cologne. "It's to protect the family name, Eleanor. To protect you from the fallout. We have to wall it off." I looked at the bright white box. "I don't understand," I said. My voice was thin, dry. Julian sighed. It was a soft, patient sound. The sound someone makes for a confused child or for a dog that will not learn a trick. "You don't need to understand the how," he said gently. "This is my world. Tech, finance. It's complicated. Let me handle it. Just sign. For him." He handed me the cold plastic stylus. I looked at his handsome, concerned face. The face of a son grieving his father. The face of a man saving his family. I took the stylus. My hand was shaking. I wrote my name. A simple, shaky line. He smiled that sad smile again and took the tablet back. The screen went dark. "Thank you," he said. "You're safe now." He left me in that house for another month. Then his assistants, 2 young women who never looked me in the eye, came. They moved me here, to this quiet, comfortable apartment, safe, powerless. I looked back at the San Diego skyline. His city. He thought I was a frail old woman, a relic. He thought I signed my life away and retreated to my garden to die. He thought I forgot. He was wrong. I was just getting better at remembering every patronizing word. Remembering the exact feeling of that cold stylus in my hand. 5 years is a long time to remember. It is a very long time to learn. I stood up. My knees cracked softly in the quiet. I picked up my empty teacup and saucer. I went inside, sliding the heavy glass door shut. The silence of the apartment was total. But it was not peace. It was time to check the ledger. I placed my empty cup in the kitchen sink. The stainless steel was cold. I ran water over the porcelain, the sound loud in the quiet room. I dried my hands on a clean linen towel, folded it, and placed it back on the counter. My apartment was decorated in shades of beige and soft white. The furniture was comfortable, traditional. Nothing stood out. Nothing suggested anything at all. I walked into the small study. It held a bookshelf, a comfortable reading chair, and the antique writing desk. It had been my husband's. It was heavy, dark mahogany with ornate brass handles on the drawers. It was the one thing Julian had insisted I keep. A memory of him, he had said, his voice full of false sympathy. I sat in the simple wooden chair. I pulled the wide central drawer all the way out until it stopped. I reached my hand deep into the empty space, my fingers pressing against the back wall of the desk. My fingernail found a small, smooth indentation in the wood. I pushed. I heard a soft click. The entire back panel of the drawer cavity unlatched. It was not a panel. It was a false front. I pulled the handle, and a deep, hidden drawer slid forward on silent modern runners. Inside, there was no old paper, no dried-up inkwells. There was a flat black keyboard, a small external hard drive, and a nest of neatly bundled cables that snaked through a hole drilled into the floor, running under the carpet, under the baseboards, to a high-end encrypted server hidden in the back of my linen closet. I touched the power button on the keyboard. A monitor, hidden behind a framed watercolor print on the desk, lit up. The screen was black. It asked for a password. I typed it. 48 characters, a string of numbers and letters I had memorized 5 years ago. My desktop appeared. It was not beige. It was a grid of files, spreadsheets, and timelines. This was my true life. I was not a gardener. I was an auditor. For 5 years, I had not been cultivating hydrangeas. I had been cultivating data. Julian, in his arrogance, had given me a new laptop when he moved me in. To browse recipes, Eleanor, he'd said. Maybe you can email the grandkids. I had used it to learn. I used the public library's fast connection. I learned about digital security, about corporate filing systems, about offshore banking regulations. I learned how men like Julian move money. I opened a file. The screen split. On the left was a video. It was Julian, standing on a stage last year, his image clear and bright. He was speaking about his flagship charity, Thorn Future. "We give 100%, he said, his voice resonating with sincerity. "Every dollar you give goes directly to building new computer labs for kids who have nothing." The crowd applauded. On the right was a spreadsheet. It was a budget report from that same charity, a public document I had downloaded from the state registry. I moved my mouse, highlighting a line item. Consulting fees, another, international administrative costs. I opened another folder. It was filled with his social media posts. Julian on a yacht with the caption, "Working hard for the children." Julian at a black tie dinner, so honored to raise funds for Thorn Future. He was a hypocrite, but that was not a crime. I was not a hacker. I did not break into his systems. I did not need to. Men like Julian are careless. They believe they are invisible. They hide their crimes behind complex legal walls, but they leave the public-facing receipts scattered everywhere. I just collected them. I cross-referenced them. I put them in order. I opened my main ledger, a massive file I had built day by day for 60 months, every stock trade, every property acquisition, every donation. I had found the pattern 3 nights ago. It was small, a digital tell. At the end of every financial quarter, a single payment was made from the Thorn Future Charity Fund. It was always an odd number. $117,450 one quarter, $98,800 the next. The recipient was always the same, a holding company based in Switzerland. A company with no website, No phone number, no listed officers, a company whose registration I had tracked back. To another company, and another, until I found the name on the final document. The true owner, Julian Thorne. He was not just a hypocrite. He was a thief. He was stealing from his own charity. He was stealing from the children he used in his videos. The proof was right there, a neat line of digital code and bank routing numbers. I looked at the clock on the screen. 1:47 p.m. I opened a web browser and checked the local news again. The article about the hospital wing was still there. At the bottom, it mentioned his next big event, the San Diego Tech Conference. He was the keynote speaker. I had the proof. Now I needed a delivery system. I stared at the name of the conference, the date, the location. He would be on a stage. He would be at his most visible, his most celebrated. My hands were steady. I knew what I had to do. The day of the San Diego Tech Conference, I woke up before the sun. I did not turn on the lights. I sat at my mahogany desk and watched the black sky turn a flat, pale gray. By 10 a.m., the conference was live. Julian would be on stage in an hour. I logged into my system. The screen cast a cool blue light on my hands. I opened my secure browser and activated the VPN. I watched the small icon on my screen. My connection location changed. First, to a server in Seattle, then to one in Romania, then to Singapore. It settled there. To the outside world, I was a user in Southeast Asia. I opened a second program. It was my digital listener. It was a simple black window with a blinking cursor. It was a monitoring tool I had written myself, using a coding language I had learned from a free online university course. I had aimed it at the donation portal of the Thorne Future website. It was designed to do one thing: record the outgoing transaction data from any donation. It had been waiting for 5 years. I opened the Thorne Future website. His face was on. The main banner, smiling, his arms around 2 small children. The website was slick, professional, and full of videos of Julian promising a better tomorrow. I clicked the Donate Now button. It was bright orange. The form asked for my name. I typed Jane Smith. It asked for my email. I typed a temporary anonymous address I had created just for this. It asked for the amount. I typed $5. I did not want to fund his vacation. I just needed to open the door. The next page asked for payment. I pulled a plastic card from a locked drawer in the desk. It was a prepaid digital credit card, one I had bought with cash at a grocery store 50 miles away. It had $20 on it. I typed in the 16-digit number. I paused. My finger hovered over the final Submit button. I looked at the live streaming feed of the conference I had running in a small window. Julian was walking onto the stage. The applause was loud, a wave of noise I could hear even with the volume low. He looked tan. He looked powerful. He held up his hand, and the crowd went silent. The future, he began, is not about what we have. It's about what we give. I looked back at the donation form. I clicked the button. The screen changed. Thank you, Jane. Your donation is processing. A small wheel turned and turned. I switched my view to the digital listener. The black window was no longer still. Lines of text began to scroll past, fast. Data packets, server handshakes, encryption keys. Most of it was noise, the normal chatter of a secure transaction. My listener program was filtering it, searching for one specific string. The string that read, Destination Account. The text scrolled. My heart was not racing. My breathing was even. I just watched. I was a scientist watching an experiment. I was a gardener waiting for rain. A minute passed. The processing wheel on the donation page was still spinning. Then a new line appeared in my listener. It was highlighted in red, just as I had programmed it to be. Transaction ID 884G21A, source 4401, amount $5.0 USD, destination, account CH4402897, B44AI. Stopped breathing. I held the mouse and slowly, carefully, copied the destination account number. I opened my main ledger, the one I had spent 5 years building. I went to the final page, to the file marked Switzerland. I pasted the number into a blank field right below the account number I had found in the corporate filings. They were an exact match. It was done. I had it. The digital tell, the active, undeniable proof, the direct link from his public charity to his private, hidden bank account. I closed the listener window. I closed the donation page. I did not need to see it finish. I leaned back in my chair. I felt no rage. I felt no satisfaction. I felt a quiet shift inside my chest, a small, cold sensation. It was the feeling of a heavy steel door closing, a final, solid click. The last piece was in place. Julian was still talking on the screen. He was animated, pointing to a graph of the charity's success. He looked free. He looked happy. I looked at the confirmed account number. I had the what. Now I needed the how, and I needed the who. I opened a new, blank document. I stared at the blinking cursor. It was time to find a messenger. I stared at the blank white document on my monitor. The confirmed Swiss account number was a string of black letters and numbers against the clean page. I had the proof. But the proof was useless inside this hidden drawer. It was useless while I was still just a ghost. I looked at the corner of my mahogany desk. A sleek silver laptop sat there, closed. It was the one Julian had given me when I first moved in. I ran my fingers over the smooth, cold metal cover. I had not used it in over a year. I did not need to. I remembered the day he gave it to me. It was in the old house, the house my husband and I had lived in for 30 years. The oil paintings were gone from the walls, leaving pale, dusty rectangles. The air smelled of cardboard boxes and packing tape. Julian arrived, not in a suit, but in an expensive gray sweater. He looked rested. He had already rebuilt his public life. "Eleanor," he said, placing a large white box on the empty dining table. "I got you a few things, to make the new place feel like home." His pity was a thick, heavy thing in the air. I could almost smell it. He opened the box. Inside was the silver laptop, a black smart speaker, and a digital picture frame. He plugged them in. "It's all set up," he said. He tapped the laptop, and the screen lit up. "See? I put your email right here. This big E icon." He looked at me, his head tilted. That same soft, patronizing smile. "It's very simple. You can browse recipes. Look at pictures of the grandkids. We'll get them to send you some." He patted my hand. "It's important to stay connected." "That's very thoughtful, Julian," I said. My voice sounded thin. "Of course." He gave my hand a final pat. "Now you just try not to get confused. Don't click on any strange pop-ups or ads. If anything seems complicated, just turn it off. Stick to the recipes, okay?" I nodded. I felt small. I felt invisible. I was the old woman. The vulnerable, confused relic. I was the person he needed me to be so he could sleep at night. He left. I sat in the empty room for hours. The digital frame on the table lit up, showing a generic stock photo of a beach. The smart speaker, unasked, began to play soft classical music. I felt a sudden, cold anger. It was not loud. It was a deep, slow chill. He thought I was a ghost already. He thought I was too old, too simple, too female to understand his world. That was the day I decided to use my vulnerability as a shield. I played the part he wrote for me. When he would call once a month, I'd ask the right questions. "Oh, Julian, this email thing is so confusing. How do I open a picture?" I heard him sigh on the other end, a small puff of air. "Just click on it, Eleanor, double-click. And this speaker," I'd say. "It just starts talking." "It frightens me," he laughed. A short, kind laugh. It's fine. Just unplug it if it bothers you. I'll have my assistant check on it next time she's in the area. He was satisfied. I was harmless, but I was not harmless. The day after I moved into this apartment, I took the bus to the Chula Vista Public Library. It was quiet. It smelled of floor wax and old paper. I sat at a computer in the back row, far from the main desk. I did not search for recipes. I typed, "How to trace a digital bank transfer." I found free university courses. I found textbooks. I found forums filled with people who, like me, wanted to learn. I bought notebooks. I sat in the library for 6 hours a day, every day, for the first year. I learned what a VPN was. I learned what a server was. I learned what digital forensics meant. I went home at night and practiced on the silver laptop he gave me. I taught myself how to code. I taught myself how to read a corporate filing, and more importantly, how to find the parts that were hidden. And every night, before I went to bed, I cleared the browser history. I looked at the silver laptop, then back at my hidden, powerful machine. He gave me the very tools I would use to dismantle him. He bought me the computer. He paid for the high-speed internet in this apartment. He just didn't expect me to read the manuals. I was done being a ghost. It was time to find a voice. I opened my secure browser. I needed a messenger, not a big newspaper. Julian's lawyers would crush them in a day. He had donors and board members at every major paper in the state. I needed someone small, someone hungry, someone who was not already on his payroll. I typed San Diego investigative journalism into the search bar. I scrolled past the big, familiar names. I found a small, plain website, the San Diego Beacon. The layout was simple, almost ugly, but the headlines were sharp. They were all about local tech corruption. Shady land deals, city council votes. I clicked on an article about a tech CEO's undeclared lobbying. It was well researched. It had documents. The byline was Maria Flores. I clicked her name. A small photo appeared. A young woman, perhaps 25. Her face was serious. Her hair was pulled back. She was not smiling. Her author bio was one sentence. Maria Flores specializes in holding San Diego's powerful accountable. I stared at her face, young, determined, underestimated. "Hello, Maria Flores," I whispered to the quiet room. I found the contact page. I copied her email address. I had my proof. I had my messenger. Maria Flores. I had my tool. I opened a new tab in my secure browser and navigated to an encrypted email service based in Germany. I created a new account. I did not use a name. The username I chose was a random string of numbers and letters, SD.Auditor. The password was another long string, one I would memorize and then delete. My new inbox was empty, stark and white. My first instinct was to write everything. To send her the 5 years of ledgers, the Swiss account number, the videos, the spreadsheets. I wanted to show her the entire ugly, perfect structure I had built. I rested my fingers on the keyboard. And I waited. That, I realized, would be a mistake. It would be loud. An email from an anonymous source with that much information, that much data, would look like a prank or a corporate attack. It would be overwhelming. It would be unbelievable. A person cannot just hand over a finished investigation. No, smart revenge is not about dumping a truckload of soil. It is about planting a single seed. It is about finding fertile ground and giving it just enough water to make it grow on its own. I had to give Maria just enough to make her suspicious, just enough to make her believe she was the one discovering the story. I went back to my research. I opened the state's public business registry. I typed in Thorn Future. I scrolled past the main pages, the ones his lawyers kept clean. I went deep into the archives, into the amendments, into the attachments. I found it. A filing from 4 years ago. Attachment 8B. List of international beneficiaries. It was a scanned document, blurry and sitting sideways. It was the kind of file no one ever clicks on. I opened it. It was a single page, listing 5 other corporate entities. The 4th one on the list was the holding company, the one based in Switzerland. It was not a secret. It was just hidden in plain sight. I copied the direct URL to that single buried PDF file. I went back to my new email account. I clicked Compose. I pasted Maria Flores' email address into the To field. For the subject line, I typed one word: the future. I used the mix of upper and lowercase to make it look less professional, more like a random tip. In the body of the email, I did not write a story. I did not mention Julian. I did not use the word crime or fraud. I typed 2 sentences. You write about tech. You should look at where the money goes, especially the public filings. I hit the Enter key twice. Then I pasted the long, complicated URL. That was all. No name, no explanation, no emotion. I reread the 2 lines. Impersonal, calculated. My finger moved to the Send button. I clicked it. The screen confirmed. Your message has been sent. I logged out of the email account. I closed the browser. I shut down the monitor. I slid the hidden drawer back into the desk, locking it with a click. The study was quiet again. The mahogany was dark and solid in front of me. I stood up and went to the kitchen. I made myself a cup of tea. I sat on my balcony in the warm afternoon sun. I watched a hummingbird visit my hydrangeas. It moved fast, its wings a blur, and then it was gone. I did not check my email for the rest of the day. I did not check it the next day. I waited. I tended my plants. I went to the market. I read a book. I played the part of Eleanor Vance, a frail relic living a quiet life. 3 days later, on a Friday morning, I went to the San Diego Beacon website. There was no big story. Nothing about Julian, nothing about Thorn Future, but there was a new article from Maria Flores. It was a short 700-word piece. The headline was, City Council approves new tech zone, but who benefits? It was a different story, but I scrolled to the bottom. I read her final paragraph. And as San Diego rushes to embrace these new tech giants, it's worth asking what we're importing with them. Accountability is not a buzzword. It's a paper trail. And as we are currently investigating, some of those trails, even from our city's most beloved charities, lead to very strange places. My heart did not pound. But I felt it, a small, definite acknowledgement. She had received the link. She had opened it. The seed was in the ground. And Maria Flores, I could tell, was a very good gardener. A week passed. The small mention in Maria Flores's article had caused a faint noise. A few financial blogs in San Diego picked it up, asking simple questions. Then, Julian's team responded. It was not a loud response. It was a smooth, professional press release. I read it on the San Diego Beacon's website, posted as an official statement from Thorn Future. The statement was full of long, empty words. Commitment to transparency, robust internal audits, complex international partnerships. It contained one specific lie. I read it twice to be sure. All our international partners are standard, vetted 501c3 organizations with full operational transparency. Vetted. He had used that word. I slid open the hidden drawer. The monitor lit up, casting its blue light. I logged into my German email account, SD.Auditor. I composed a new message to Maria Flores. Subject, vetted. Body, this partner from your first article. Check the Swiss Business Registry. It has no website. It has no employees. It has no listed officers. It has only one thing, a bank account. I attached the registration document I had found months ago. The one that was just a name and an address. I hit send. 2 days later, the Beacon published Maria's new article. The headline was bigger. Thorn Future's vetted partner is a Swiss shell company. The story was devastating. Maria had done her work. She had not just used my document. She had called the Swiss address. It was a mail forwarding service. She had searched for the company's officers and found none. She had laid my seed bare for the whole city to see. Now, the noise was loud. The city's main newspaper, the Union Tribune, was forced to cover it. They ran a story on page A3, Questions arise over Thorn Charity's finances. Julian could no longer ignore it. His personal PR team took over. This time, the statement came from him. I watched the video. He stood in the lobby of his glass tower downtown. He was not smiling. His face was tight, his eyes angry. He gripped the sides of the podium. "A baseless, pathetic smear campaign," he said, his voice hard. "This is a desperate attack by a jealous corporate rival. Someone who wants to tear down what my father and I have built for this city." He was looking for a man in a suit, a competitor. "My father's legacy is clean," he spat. "My charity is clean, and these disgusting anonymous lies will be met with the full force of the law." He had called me a liar. I went back to my desk. I opened my anonymous email. I composed my third and final message to Maria Flores. Subject: not a rival. Just the numbers. Body: he said the charity is clean. He is lying. He is the sole owner of the Swiss company. He has been paying himself from his own charity every quarter for 5 years. Here is the ledger. Match the dates to his company's public reports. Here is the Swiss account number. It is his. I attached one file. Not my whole life's work, just one clean, simple spreadsheet. It showed 2 columns, the dates of the quarterly payments, and the exact odd-numbered amounts transferred. I hit send. For the next week, I did not just watch the news. I watched the city. I went to the online forums, the Beacon's comment section, the San Diego business boards. I watched the narrative turn, slowly, and then all at once. Wait, if those numbers are real, I just checked the public filings. The dates match. This doesn't look like a rival. This looks like simple theft. Julian's PR team was everywhere. They were in the comments, using fake names, trying to change the subject. What a bitter reporter. He does so much for the city. It was useless. The numbers were too clean. The lie was too simple. I watched Julian's spokesperson on a local news show. The man was sweating. "We are investigating the source of this illegal hack," he said. "We are coordinating with authorities to find him." They were searching for an angry man. A powerful hacker. He with a grudge. They would never find him. They would never think to look in a quiet apartment in Chula Vista. They would never think to look for a woman. And they would never, ever think to look for me. I closed the forums. I logged out of the email account and deleted it. My work as the SD.auditor was finished. Maria Flores had everything she needed. I opened my personal public calendar, the one I used for doctor's appointments and social club meetings. I looked at the date for the following week: Balboa Park Gala, Philanthropist of the Year Award. Julian was the guest of honor. It was the climax of his social calendar, the crown of his fake life. I looked at the date. I looked at my dark monitor. It was the perfect stage for a final act. I did not go to Balboa Park. I had no interest in the smell of perfume and expensive food. I had no desire to see his face in person. I sat in my study at the mahogany desk. My hidden monitor was on. I had 2 windows open. On the left, the official live stream of the Philanthropist of the Year Gala. On the right, the home page of the San Diego Beacon. It was 7:45 p.m. The homepage was still showing Maria's story from yesterday. Thorn's denial faces new scrutiny. On the live stream, the sound of polite applause came through my speakers. A woman in a red dress stood at the podium, reading from a card. And now, a man who truly embodies the spirit of giving. Our Philanthropist of the Year, Julian Thorn. The applause grew. Julian walked onto the stage. He looked perfect. His tuxedo was expertly tailored. His hair was neat. He waved, and he smiled his wide, confident smile. He stepped up to the podium. He placed a small, dark phone on it. He adjusted the microphone. "Thank you," he said. His voice was smooth and deep. "Thank you. To be honored by my city, the city my father loved." I looked at the clock on my monitor. 7:47 p.m. I moved my mouse to the San Diego Beacon window. I clicked the refresh button. The page went white, then reloaded. The old headline was gone. The new one was huge, stark, and black. Thorne's Harvest, full ledger shows CEO stole millions from own charity. The story was live. I clicked it. It was not just the article. Maria had published everything. The complete spreadsheet I had sent, the bank registration documents, the timeline of his lies, the vetted partner, the Swiss account number. She had even found the original record of my $5 donation and showed how it connected directly to his hidden account. It was all there. A clean, undeniable 5-year map of his crime. I returned to the live stream. Julian was still speaking. A legacy not just of buildings, he said, but of a community, a future we build together. I saw the first change. A man in the front row, someone I recognized as Julian's aide, looked down at his phone. His head snapped up. His face, even on the small screen, was pale. He looked at Julian. He tried to get his attention. Julian ignored him. He was annoyed by the interruption. Then, a second phone lit up. Then a third. A low sound started in the audience. A murmur. People were not looking at the stage anymore. They were looking at their screens. Then they were looking at each other. Julian paused. His smile faltered. He heard the noise. A future, he repeated, trying to get the room back. His own phone on the podium lit up. A bright white notification. Then another. And another. He glanced down. His smile did not fall. It froze. It locked onto his face, a tight, terrible expression. He looked up from the phone, at the audience. He saw them. He saw their faces, their phones. He saw their expressions change from respect to confusion. From confusion to disgust. His face went pale. The blood drained from it. He gripped the sides of the podium. His knuckles were white. He looked out at the crowd, his eyes wide, searching. He was looking for the rival, the hacker, the man who had done this to him. He was looking for him. He found only 1,000 people staring back, the light of their phones shining on their faces. I watched him for one more second. I watched his rage and confusion. I watched him realize that there was no one in the room to attack. I moved my mouse. I clicked the small X on the live stream window. Julian vanished. I clicked the X on the Sango beacon window. Maria's story vanished. I powered down the monitor. The screen went black. I slid the hidden drawer back into the desk. It closed with a soft final click. The mahogany was smooth under my hand. I stood up from the chair. I walked to the sliding glass door and pulled it open. The night air was cool. The distant sound of city traffic was a low, steady hum. I picked up my small metal watering can from the floor of the balcony. I tipped it, and a stream of water fell into the dark soil of my hydrangeas. The water made a quiet shush sound. My apartment was silent. My revenge was complete. It had not been an explosion. It had been a slow, careful audit. An ending. I did not feel happy. I did not feel rage. I felt finished. I stood on my balcony, holding the empty can. I looked out at the lights of the city. I finally had my peace.